All right, let's talk nutrition. We're going to cut right through all that confusing diet culture noise. The goal here? To build you a rock-solid, science-backed plan for managing your weight and losing fat in a way that actually lasts. So yeah, let's get right into it.
I mean, if you've ever felt totally lost in all the conflicting advice out there, you are definitely not alone. It feels like every single week there's some new diet that's supposed to be the magic bullet, right? So what does the science really say about all this? Look, our goal today is super simple. We're going to give you the core principles, the fundamentals of energy and macros, so you can finally stop chasing those crazy fad diets and start building a plan that is tailor-made for you, something that'll stick with you for the long haul.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to hit the #1 most important rule of weight loss. Then we'll go beyond just calories and get into your macros, the building blocks of your diet. We'll dig into why protein is basically your secret weapon, get into the nitty-gritty on carbs and fats, and then wrap it all up by looking at what some massive scientific studies tell us about how to actually make this stuff work long-term.
All right, section 1. And look, before we even whisper the words carbs or protein, we have to lay down the law. And I mean the actual law of thermodynamics that controls weight change. It's all about energy balance. So think about it. Your body is like an engine that's always running, even when you're just sleeping. The total fuel it burns in a day is what we call your total daily energy expenditure, or TDEE for short. And that's not just from your workouts. It's your resting metabolism, just keeping you alive, plus your activity and, get this, even the energy it takes to digest your food. This number, your TDEE, that's your baseline. That's your maintenance.
So, the actual formula for fat loss? It's deceptively simple, even if it's not always easy to do. You have to eat fewer calories than your body burns, fewer than your TDE. That's called a calorie deficit. And honestly, it's non-negotiable. There's no getting around it. Now, for a smart, sustainable pace, we're talking about a deficit of maybe 300 to 500 calories a day. That usually gets you about 0.5 to 1% of body weight loss per week, which is the sweet spot. Why? Because that pace is key to holding on to your muscle and keeping your metabolism from crashing.
Okay, so we've hammered home the how much, the calories, but that's only half the story. The what you eat is just as crucial. And that's where we get into the building blocks of your entire diet, the macronutrients, or macros. Right, so all your calories come from just 3 places: protein, carbs, and fats. As you can see here, protein and carbs give you 4 calories for every gram, but fat, that's way more energy dense, packing 9 calories per gram. And don't think of any of them as bad. Each one has a super important, unique job in your body. We're talking everything from building muscle, to fueling your brain, to making sure your hormones are working right. So you might be thinking, why not just count calories and call it a day? Well, as registered dietitian Albert Abiev says, understanding your macros is what really sets you up for long-term success. I mean, think about it. 1,800 calories from chicken, broccoli, and avocado is going to feel completely different than 1,800 calories from cookies and soda. One leaves you full and energized, the other leaves you hungry and crashing an hour later. It's the quality of those calories that controls your hunger, your energy, and ultimately what your body looks like. Okay, let's talk about your new best friend for fat loss. If you're going to focus on just one macronutrient, make it protein. Seriously, it is the secret weapon that makes this whole process so much more manageable and effective. So let's talk about why protein is so amazing. It all comes down to hunger. Protein is just incredible at making you feel full and satisfied. That's what satiety means. It literally goes to war with your hunger hormones. It tells ghrelin, the I'm hungry hormone, to quiet down, while it boosts the hormones that tell your brain, hey, we're good, stop eating. And what does that mean for you? Less hunger, fewer cravings, which is, a total game changer when you're trying to eat less.
And get this, protein has another superpower. It's called the thermic effect of food, or TEF. Basically, your body has to burn calories just to digest the food you eat. And look at this chart. It's wild. For protein, your body torches a whopping 20 to 30% of its calories just breaking it down. Compare that to carbs and fats. It's not even close. That's like a free metabolic boost just for choosing protein.
Okay, so what's the magic number? How much do you actually need? For fat loss, the science points to a target of about 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein for every kilogram you weigh. Now, that is way higher than the standard government recommendation, but there's a really good reason for it. Hitting that number is absolutely crucial for protecting your muscle while you're dropping fat. And you want to keep that muscle. It's what keeps your metabolism burning hot.
All right, so we've got our protein goal locked in. Now let's talk carbs and fats. With these two, it's really less about the exact amount and way more about the quality and understanding a little bit of the nuance.
So, when it comes to carbs, you've probably heard of the glycemic index, or GI. It just measures how fast a food spikes your blood sugar. But there's another tool, the insulin index, that might be even more important. It doesn't just look at sugar. It measures how much insulin your body pumps out in response to a food. And believe it or not, those two things aren't always the same.
So, why should you care about this? Well, if you're dealing with anything like insulin resistance, prediabetes, or PCOS, managing your insulin response is everything. And here's the tricky part. Some foods that we think of as healthy, like milk or yogurt, have a low GI. They don't spike your blood sugar much, but they can cause a huge insulin spike. And since having constantly high insulin levels is basically a signal to your body to store fat, well, you can see why paying attention to the insulin index could be a total game changer.
And fats, let's be clear, fats are not the bad guy. Your body absolutely needs dietary fat for things like making hormones and absorbing certain vitamins. The key, just like with carbs, is quality. You want to lean into those monounsaturated fats. Think olive oil, avocado, nuts, and those amazing anti-inflammatory omega-3s you get from salmon and walnuts. Those fats are your friends. You just want to be a little more mindful with the amount of saturated fats from things like red meat and butter.
Okay, so we've got the theory down. The core principles are all there. But what happens when you take these ideas out of the textbook and test them in the real world? On hundreds of people? For months or even years? Let's look at a couple of huge studies that did just that.
First, we have the Diet Fit study. This thing was a beast, a huge year-long showdown. They took over 600 people and put them on either a healthy low-fat diet or a healthy low-carb diet. And I gotta stress the word healthy. Both groups were told to eat whole foods and ditch the processed junk. So it was a fair fight.
So who won? Low carb or low fat? Well, nobody. It was basically a tie. After a whole year, the amount of weight people lost was almost identical in both groups. The takeaway here is massive. The exact macro split didn't seem to matter nearly as much as just eating high-quality food, and, this is the big one, being able to actually stick to the plan.
Okay, next up, the Matador study. This one looked at a totally different problem, something everyone who's ever dieted fears, your metabolism slowing down to a crawl. So they set up a clever experiment. One group dieted for 16 weeks straight. The other group did something different. They dieted for 2 weeks, then took a 2-week break where they ate at maintenance, and they just kept repeating that cycle. And the results were kind of shocking. The group that took those diet breaks, they lost more body fat. And not only that, their metabolism didn't slow down nearly as much. What this tells us is that taking planned, strategic breaks from dieting isn't quitting. It might actually lead to way better and more sustainable results.
And really, both of these studies point to the same powerful conclusion. It's summed up perfectly here. You can have the most physiologically sound, scientifically perfect diet plan in the world, but if it's so miserable that you can't stick to it, it's worthless. Sustainability isn't just important, it's everything. It beats perfection every single time.
So where does that leave us? Look, all the principles we talked about today, the calorie deficit, getting enough protein, focusing on quality foods, that's your toolkit. Those are the rules of the game. But the most effective diet on the planet isn't some secret plan written in a book. It's the one you can actually follow, the one that fits your life, your tastes, your sanity. So the real question you should be asking isn't what's the best diet, it's what's the best diet for me?